This is Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla.
The great Kevin Scholla.
Welcome to the Palin Update Radio Magazine.
Thicken your skin and you march forth with your message, your priorities, your agenda that you believe is right for America.
And a pleasant good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla, joined by my co-host Tamara Colbert. We're so happy you could join us once again as we continue our remote broadcasts during this COVID period of Mama Grizzly Radio. And we have had such just wonderful guests these last few months since the December and then the turn of the new year, and we continue that trend today. Head to the great state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where we are talking to just a wonderful candidate running for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. She is Paula Patrick, joining us today on Mama Grizzly Radio. Judge Patrick, thanks for being with us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys today about my candidacy, and let's just move forward with some great things happening in Pennsylvania.
Well, PA, obviously, the center of a lot of controversy over the past presidential election, and a lot of issues, really, that you could look at Pennsylvania as really a barometer for a lot of things in the United States. But I want to talk first about you specific and why you're running, but also just your approach to a judgeship. You know, we've seen on all levels in the past few years, especially during the Trump administration, how things have been handled in certain courts throughout this country where clearly you see activism going on, activist judges instead of judges who are just actually doing their job, which is following the law. So can you talk to me a little bit about your approach behind the bench and what you see out there when it comes to this activism that's run rampant?
Yes. Actually, I've been a judge now. This is my 18th year in the Court of Common Pleas. And what I always do in deciding a case, of course, I look at the facts and the evidence and, of course, the law. And so what a judge is to do, the judge is to apply the law to the facts and to the evidence. And we are to follow the law and not decide something different. And I say that because, as you said, we do have a lot of judicial activism going on. And we also see, let's be honest, there's been this liberal bullying, I think, of left that has taken place in our judiciary as well. And so we need people that are willing to stand up in the wake of any opposition and stand up for our rights, to protect our rights and our freedoms, and people that are willing to stand on our constitutions. In fact, as a judge, we take an oath to obey and defend our constitutions. And so it's important that, you know, whenever someone comes before us, that the judge follows the law. I think that it doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative. When people come to court, they expect a judge to follow the law. They don't expect anything different. And so when we have our judges that then want to sit as legislators, I think that is where the problem begins. And that begins to really undermine, you know, faith in our judiciary.
I noticed how you put the plural there, constitutions. So you're talking about, obviously, the U.S. Constitution, but the Constitution of the state of Pennsylvania, where you're running. And, you know, that was an issue that came up during the presidential campaign. People obviously talked about voter fraud and machines and all the hocus pocus that went on. That aside, the real issue in states like Pennsylvania is the fact that you had governors making decisions on elections that clearly in the state constitution said that you would have to go through the legislature to change election laws and election routines at a certain point. Yet, not unlike COVID shutdowns, governors just had this overreach and went ahead and did what they wanted to, and the people kind of fell in line. So I don't think that would happen if we had someone like Paula Patrick in a higher seat.
That's correct. I mean, listen, in Pennsylvania, we had our Secretary of State that I believe did some overreaching as well. And I can't talk much about it as a sitting judge, but I can say this, that Justice Clarence Thomas was absolutely correct as he adjudicated this matter here in Pennsylvania. And because what happened was there's no hearing or anything. It was just left there like that. And one thing that Justice Thomas said was that, you know, it's important that we get some resolve on what's happening in Pennsylvania, because if not, then, of course, people's confidence in our judiciary goes. And so he was absolutely correct about that. And I would just encourage people that when they get a chance, read Justice Thomas's dissent. It was quite powerful. And that's what we need on our Pennsylvania Supreme Court, someone who's not afraid to stand up, someone who's not afraid to speak out, and someone who's not afraid to call them on it when they don't follow the law.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Thomas, because when he did issue that, we did have a pretty funny, but unfortunately not funny as well, meme on our Mama Grizzly Radio social media with 9 pictures of Thomas that say what a wonderful Supreme Court that would be if we had 9 Clarences. I don't think we'd have to worry that much. It's hard for some people, I guess they would say, well, it's hard to leave your views behind when you're in any position. And that may be the case from an emotional standpoint, from what you want. But it's like I tell my kids when I coach baseball, if it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. You have to have a certain type of makeup to be a judge, right? And I mean, obviously there's issues that you probably think on your own life personally you would handle differently, but you will follow the law.
Absolutely. And, we are obligated that we are not to rule based upon our own personal feelings, but based upon our own way of thinking. We are guided and must rule based upon what the law says. And so anytime that, we want to rule any other way, personal preference or whatever else, that's not the law and that's not correct. And that's why we have appellate courts. And so when we see judges that will not follow the law, oftentimes if it is appealed, and if those judges on the appellate follow the law, then there should be some resolve. Unfortunately, what happened last year with our court, as Clarence Thomas said, it leaves us with no resolve. And I think that's important, that if we are going to be a nation that has laws, that we must follow our laws. Because if we don't follow our laws, then I believe that chaos will ensue, and that, there will be really a destruction of our respective form of government.
I know, Tamara, you talked to me about how impressed you were with her background and, just her as a person, that this is someone you could trust in a position like that. I'd like you to touch on that if you could.
Well, I need to add my 2 cents to Clarence Thomas, because I actually, before I knew we were going to have an opportunity to chat with you, I just have to say, his Pennsylvania dissent is absolutely extraordinary. And he has a couple of sentences that are truly profound in nature. And I want to read these couple of sentences, and I'd love for you to comment on them, because I believe what he is talking about is absolutely fundamental to our American structure of government. And Justice Thomas says, elections are of the most fundamental significance under our constitutional structure. Through them, we exercise self-government, but elections enable self-governance only when they include processes that give citizens confidence in the fairness of the election. Unclear rules threaten to undermine the system and sow confusion, ultimately dampening confidence in the integrity and fairness of elections. This is truly a fundamental right that the United States Constitution gives every citizen. What are your thoughts on our system of governance and how the judiciary should truly be functioning in America?
Well, just as you read there, I mean, Justice Thomas was absolutely correct. And that is our role as the judiciary. We are to ensure that there is no undermining of the public's confidence in what we're doing. And we do that by following the law and by holding requisite hearings so that things are vetted out. That's what happens in a court of law. And so when we see that we're not following on our own laws and our own precedents, this is what happens, just like Justice Thomas says. It does create in the minds of the people that they can't get a fair hearing, that there is some corruption going on. And, and people do think that way if there is no following of the law. That's why we have the law, so that people are confident that our system of justice works.
You're exactly right. Something that I think is extremely impressive about you is that you You are a black woman born and raised in the South.
Mm-hmm.
You were born, you say, I've read a couple of interviews in your own words, that being a Democrat was ingrained, as though it was on your birth certificate.
Right.
What did you go through to change your party affiliation, both kind of intellectually to think about that process, and then personally from maybe friends or family members as you were explaining to them that change?
Well, I can say this. I'll tell people that, being black in America and, and being a Democrat is kind of on your birth certificate. And so that's just kind of how it was, me, of course, in my own house. We never talked about, what it means to be a Democrat. We never discussed it. We just were black and we were Democrat, and we just would vote Democrat. And that was just it. There was no, talking about a platform or what that really means. And so, instantly, of course, I grew up being a Democrat. And so it wasn't until 2009 I had decided to go, I was thinking about running for the higher court at that time, at Superior Court, and I had gone to a meeting where there were Democratic chairs from around the state. And also, incidentally, at this meeting, there was an individual that represented Planned Parenthood that was there as well. And so they take me in this room. I'm with all these chairs, and also there was the individual from Planned Parenthood. And they took me in the back, and they said, "Listen, Judge, everybody loves you, but we have a problem with you." And I said, "Okay, what's the problem?" And they said, "You are pro-life." And I said, "Okay." And they said, if you just say you're pro-choice, we will support you. But, pro-life is a problem. And so at that time, the woman who was from Planned Parenthood, she stood up in the middle of the meeting, and she said, "How could a black woman from Philadelphia be pro-life?" Right? And so I then stood up, and I looked at her, and all the chairs are in the room, and I said, the reason why this black woman from Philadelphia is pro-life is because Margaret Sanger wanted to make sure somebody like me never came before you. I then got my things and I left. And for those who don't know who Margaret Sanger was the creator of abortion because she believed that black people were feeble-minded and we should be destroyed. Okay? And so I then had taken my things, and I knew that I would want to run for the higher court someday, but I knew now my difficulty was being a Democrat. So my question was, what did the parties believe? What were platforms? So it's at that point that I decided to go research the party platforms. And really, to my shock, I found out that my views were conservative. I was always more in line with the Republican Party than the Democrat. Even how I was raised. I mean, my father served his country honorably. He was a soldier, and he always taught us, the value of hard work, and also taught us to love this country, to love each other and this nation. And so, whenever, I was looking at this, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. My values have always been conservative. My father had, it was 4 kids in our family, so clearly he was a fiscal conservative. All these things that really my household was, and evidently people that I grew up with that were black the same way. People we knew from church. I mean, we all had those same traditional conservative values. But no one ever came along and said, well, you're conservative or you're liberal. We just didn't know. Okay? And that's what happened. And so in 2009, once I found out, I made the bold switch to become a Republican in one of the most liberal jurisdictions on the planet, Philadelphia. and the thing about it is that, it didn't do anything for me to become a Republican in a place where there are very few Republicans. But I can tell you that the conviction in my heart, I felt much better because I felt as though I had arrived at the right conclusion in my life and in my heart. And so I have now been a Republican jurist on the bench longer than I've been a Democratic jurist. And I will say this, that even as a Democrat, I've always upheld the law on the bench. I've always sought to protect individual rights and freedom. I always sought to uphold our rule of law. That's the nature of a judge.
I wish I lived there in that district. I would be your chief campaign advocate out there knocking on every single door for you. It's extraordinary. Your words right now are extraordinary, Kevin.
Yeah, I don't know what's stopping you from voting for it. People vote out of state all the time. I mean, I know I will be voting for it, as will my dog and my, my great grandparents.
There you go.
So you have all those votes. So, Judge, talk about the race. What's the feel? Where does it stand? What are we looking at as far as opponents? And do you have the backing as far as the party?
Yes, I was not what is called the endorsed Republican candidate. In other words, that I had gone through the party processes that they determined whether they're going to endorse or not, and they voted to endorse, but there were people that voted not to endorse. But at any rate, I did not get the party's backing for the endorsement. They actually endorsed one of my opponents, who is a middle-aged, white male, who's also a judge, and he's a judge on the Commonwealth Court. And so, I did not get endorsement. And I would simply say that, I think that our party made a mistake with that, because in looking at, my own background and my experience and my record against my competitors, it's really, top notch. And I would say it's really supreme to anyone who looks at it. And I'll tell you this. Between me and my competitors, there are two judges that are running on the Commonwealth Court. The Commonwealth Court is one of our appellate courts here, but it's a court of limited jurisdiction. In other words, they don't hear the type of cases, most of the cases that come before the Supreme Court. We have an appellate court called the Superior Court that listens to the things that I hear, whether it's juvenile cases, dependent, delinquent, criminal matters, all types of civil matters, from civil jury trials and criminal trials, as well as orphans court. All of these matters go before our Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And the Commonwealth Court is a limited jurisdiction court created in 1970 that pretty much listens to cases where the Commonwealth is a party and all of our statewide elections, okay? So in terms of experience, I'll tell you this. I'm different from both of them in that I am the only one running that's been a judge for 18 years, since 2003. My competitors they were only elected in 2009. I am the only one running that has adjudicated more than 20,000 cases in my career and written more than 600 opinions to our 3 appellate courts. I am the only one running that actually has legal teaching experience. I served as adjunct professor at LaSalle University, teaching students, but I also sit as a lecturer and as a presenter frequently with the Pennsylvania Bar Institute, Pennsylvania Bar Association, the National Business Institute, etc. I am the only one running that when they highly recommended me, they said this about me and no other candidate, that they are confident that I, Paula Patrick, will serve the Commonwealth on that Supreme Court with distinction because of my distinguishing qualities and background and skills. I am the only one running that can beat the Democrats in the fall. And so I think it makes a difference. And, although when my opponent says, well, there's no Commonwealth Court judges on the Supreme Court and how they would bring a change, but the real change is if I'm elected to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, I'm able to take our party into demographics and into areas where our party has been historically rejected. I can let people know the value of our conservative message regardless of what your race and your background is. And people must know that we stand on true values as conservatives. We believe in liberties and freedoms. We believe that this country is one of the greatest countries on the face of the earth where we can rise up out of the ashes and become top-notch if we choose to. I believe that we need to let people know that this party is still the party of Lincoln, and it accepts all people.
When you don't get an endorsement from an establishment party, that's a good thing, in my opinion, especially in states like PA where they have let us down again and again and again with the lack of fight, the lack of backbone, and the lack of real candidates. But I will say this, I have noticed a lot of endorsements who are getting, and guess where they're coming from? Law enforcement, sheriffs. It seems that all the endorsements that you would want have been coming to you in droves of late.
Yeah, and the thing about it, too, is I got to be honest. I mean, I've been very well received by Republicans around the state because a lot of people are showing some serious, anger with our party brass because some things that have happened. People are upset about the Senator Toomey situation. They're upset about the election situation. And so I do think that the fact that I'm not endorsed, does bode well for me. And at the time, I think that, me and my candidacy represents, I think, the true Republican. I mean, hey, I have the true Republican story, Donald Trump brought everybody into this party, and when he made his different laws and policies, it affected all of us, and he included everyone in his policies. I mean, he did specific things for African Americans that he did for Hispanic Americans, that he did for, even Asian Americans. So, we must, I believe, build on that platform and not go away from it, and nor run away from it. So it's important that we elect conservatives that are not afraid to stand up and do what's right. And I've been doing that for now 18 years here in Philadelphia. I want to take that same experience to the Supreme Court, and people can find out more about me on my website, votepaulapatrick.com. Again, that's votepaulapatrick.com, or on Facebook at Judge Paula Patrick.
All right, Judge, fantastic. We wish you the best. And, Tamara, I didn't tell you this off the air purposely because I wanted to get your reaction on this unfiltered. This is a great one for the ages, and I want Governor Palin to hear this as well. So Judge Patrick was on our show years ago. She was on, I'd say, 3-4 years ago, Judge?
2017, yes.
Yeah, 2017, and we had her on organically. I didn't know her at all. We had her on, great guest. We liked her candidacy at the time. Since then, unbeknownst to me and her, we figured out that she was on the show, and that in those 4 years since, her child and two of my kids went to school together, and her son was on my football team.
Yep.
And I've dealt with Judge Patrick as a parent. She's the best at bringing Gatorade and snacks for everybody. and we had no idea or ever put it together that you're Judge Patrick and I'm Kevin Scholla. We were just Coach Kevin and this young man's mom.
Well, that's called a God wink, Kevin.
Yes,
that's
it is.
A divine appointment, right?
And so Judge reached out to us and said, hey, Kevin, do you remember that you're on the show? I said, I do, and that's you, and this is when this happened. So I can tell you, we liked her before we knew her, and I can vouch for her personally now, one of the best parents we've ever dealt with, just a tremendous person, top to bottom. Yes, she aligns with us politically. I love what she says. She has the resume and the proof as a judge, but she's the real deal here from top to bottom, and she's a pretty cute dog too. So she has a very cute dog. So I mean, there's really nothing you can't say about this woman. And I'm speaking now personally, where I was around her, not even knowing it was the same person.
Well, that's extraordinary, because what it says is that you don't see yourself above the people that you are seeing in your courtroom. You're actually a woman who is part of your community. That means you understand what citizens who are coming into your courtroom for a reason. You understand where they're at because you go to the same grocery store. Your kids play together. You're involved in your kids' sports in school. And I think the real American grassroots, if you will, and I say that for just regular Americans who are not hyper-political or hyper-engaged in politics. They just want to know they get a fair shake at whatever their experience is in their life. And certainly going into court is, of course, it's intimidating, even if you are a law-abiding citizen, whatever that reason is. And Judge, I would love to know what your perspective is on how you see yourself as part of your greater community, and that difference that you being in that courtroom does to elevate your community.
Well, I think that we all bear responsibility to one another, and I say that by saying that if you're in a position to reach out and to really help someone, then you should be willing to do it. One of the things that I've done since I've been on the bench is that I started a little program I do with my own court, where it's called A Day with the Judge, where I get inner city youth together from like middle school on to high school, and I have them to come to my courtroom at 9 a.m. And I bring them to the back, and I talk to them, ask them where they want to be when they grow up, and you know what's going on in their life. And they're all very silent. They're all kind of intimidated. They don't want to talk. They don't know, you know. And then I take the courtroom. I sit them all in the jury box. Let them watch what's going on in the courtroom from like 9:30 until noon. I then take them upstairs to our judicial dining room, and at that point, then I buy them lunches. Everything is, you know, I fund myself. And the kids are just jumping over each other. I want to be a judge. I want to be a lawyer. I want to, and they're so excited. And just to see the total change in them in a matter of a few hours of them watching what happens in the courtroom. And that's important because a lot of these kids from the inner city, they have a negative, experience with the judicial system, and that's largely because of family members and things that they've seen and what they've heard. And so to let them see it on the other side of the bench, I think was an eye-opener for a lot of them. And as a result, I think a lot of them were able to change their lives and certainly their perspective in only a matter of a couple of hours and watching and see what goes on. I also give back in that I started a women's ministry in 2017 where I had women to get back on track after different setbacks and recovery and things like that. So, I believe that if you are a true leader, you're in fact a true servant, and that we're never, above anyone else in that regard because we're all children of God.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So thank you so much. We appreciate you. We'll be following closely. I certainly want to stick her in a yard sign, and we will be talking to you again, I hope. And thank you so much for joining us and sharing your views today.
So thank you so much, guys. It was wonderful. And you guys take care. Remember, votepaulapatrick.com. Thank you so much.
And ladies and gentlemen, to hear any of our shows, go right to mamagrizzlyradio.com or right through sarahpalin.com. And also be sure to follow along on Twitter at Tamara Colbert, at Kevin Scholla, and at Mama Grizz Radio. On Facebook, Kevin Scholla, Mama Grizzly Radio, and on Instagram, Tamara Colbert USA, Kevin Scholla USA, and Mama Grizzly Radio. We'll be back again with our next show, again, still with our remote broadcast, but all in all, working out pretty well. And ladies and gentlemen, we hope you will join us again next time here on Mama Grizzly Radio. Until then, have a wonderful Passover and Easter.
The Palin Update is produced by Lena Anderson, the Andy L. Kramer, and Lori Ann Lewis. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update Radio Magazine on Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.